The country where I come from, the truth is an irony. Just like animal farm, justice mean inequity. So who go say the truth? Who go say the truth? Christian can say silence, Islamic leaders silence, kings and queens silence, traditional leaders silence. So who go say the truth? We are the workers of composite call. Now by area, why no better? We are the workers of composite call. One guy's out here, why no better? Who go say the truth? Who go say the truth? Oh, he needed to know see what I see so. Now your friend on a come at them. Only papi obeka na sembia. So I want to obet you too. Everybody was afraid. And when Tina to my cottage again, once my boy dumping one and but who go tell the truth? Nanai or say me. Nanso bien person beka wasam because everybody is afraid. Anya safwe muayini. Akuku trofo nyina dalima. And see who go say the truth? Obiaja konson so to cross your mansa to me be a cacobrafo. Efo anyina ye. Efo when you know yet. Na so kutrata down na so be dia back or why no keke. I fene for be man mo pia for efo ne cross on my mo. Hanya safwe mo ayini. Akuku trofo nyina dalima. And who go say the truth? Abaya di bote chino. Yedi bi bebo nyande bi. Fechisa would your mouth pipinuma. Would your mind never shine my frafonsa? But who go tell the truth? DUC silence, even journalists silence. Oh, then who go say the truth? Right is right. Wrong is wrong, no matter how you justify. You say you wanna get rid of corruption. Someone want to help you, now the person become your target. Jobless no they mean senseless. Poverty no they mean useless. One day them go resist.
Hello once again and welcome to the program MyView, coming to you live on today's Ghana News TV. This is our social political program where we come to share our views on pertinent issues based on Ghana, our motherland. And wherever you are beautifully and gratefully watching us live on today's Ghana News TV with me, Jerome, your host. And let me equally just remind you that you can also watch us live on Switch by satellite, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube, all on today's Ghana News TV. And equally, you can follow us on Twitter and TikTok, as well as podcasts on Anchor FM. Good evening once again. It's always a pleasure to come your way. And today, we come again with a wonderful discussion on the crisis of our motherland, Ghana's economic crisis, the domestic debt exchange program, vis-a-vis the treatment meted out to our pensioners, and the way forward. What are your views? Our pensioners who have worked, who have toiled so hard for Mother Ghana, and now they are on rest from the day-to-day activities. The little that they have invested that will yield some results or some dividends to keep them above the waters. Suddenly, government tries to pick it away from them. Is that a fair deal? Stay tuned and express your views when we return from this short break. Good evening once again.
Waiting there happy for Africa. Dusty old men holding on to power, leading the people to where? The grave? Wicked criminal leaders. See them a come, them coming like an angel. But them a thief, them no say them a thief. Mr. President, you coming like a savior. But you a thief, you know say you a thief. Thief president, why a thieving so? Thief man, why a thief so? The people they must suffer, but you don't care so. Thief man, why a thief so? I see the people crying every day, yo. They want food, them can't find. I see the youth looking for a job, oh, every way, them can't find. Mr. President, him just belly full, oh. Him and the family, they no suffer, oh. Suffer, no poor man they suffer, oh. Suffer, rich man know they suffer. Suffer, no poor man they suffer, oh. Suffer, rich man they suffer, lie. See them a come, they coming like an angel. But them a thief, them no say them a thief. Mr. President, you coming like a savior. Why you a thief? You know say you a thief. Thief president, why a thieving so? Thief man, why a thief so? The people they must suffer, but you don't care so. Thief man, why a thief so? Mr. President, why you dey lie so? Before election, you tell me you be angel. When you sick, you run go a London. When we sick, oh, we die for Kolebo. Mr. President, why you wicked so? Tell me how you dey sleep at night, oh. See them a come, they coming like an angel. But them a thief, them no say them a thief. Mr. President, you coming like a savior. But you a thief, you know say you a thief. Thief president, why a thieving so? Thief man, why a thief so? The people they must suffer, but you don't care so. Thief man, why a thief so? This is Mr. Traitor, master of sleeping. This is Mr. Traitor, master of sleeping. Yarambarayi Fiafiwo Alakpatowo Na Yeruya.
So, welcome back to our show, My View show this evening. And as I did indicate, we want to look at Ghana's economic crisis, the program of a domestic debt exchange, and the treatment to our pensioners. Is it a fair deal? Why are we where we are today? The IMF has made an appointment to the Bank of Ghana. Is that a reality? Does it show that we have failed? Are we being recolonized again? Stay tuned in this show as I bring on board no other person but Mr. Charles Mensah of CFR fame, that is a Coalition for Restoration, and currently a member of the National Democratic Congress Hamburg branch. Mr. Mensah, you're most welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, and good evening, Jerome, to your listeners across the globe for tuning in to listen to this program. I give them all.
Yeah, it's good to have you. The last time we had you here, we're looking at a domestic debt exchange program and the way out. Today, we still want to to look at it again vis-a-vis the entire economic crisis of the country with reference to the treatment that has been given to our pensioners. At the end of the day, I think they have, I'm not very sure, but it looks like they have been exonerated on their, or their bonds have been exonerated from the entire program. But is it a fair deal? Now, let's go back. A lot of people, those who missed the first show, might want to understand a bit about this the domestic debt exchange. Is it really necessary, or is simply because it's a conditionality of the IMF?
Thank you very much, Mr. Jerome. To begin with, this domestic debt exchange has come about as a result of the crisis the economy faces at the moment. Hadn't been the current situation, there wouldn't be the need for government to do any debt exchange program. But unfortunately, where we find ourselves as a country is very, very precarious in such a way that if government does not do this debt exchange program, the government itself has indicated through the finance minister that if by middle of March, the government is unable to get the board approval of the IMF, the economy will crash. Yes, the economy, in my view, may crash on paper, but in practicality may not crash, simply because we have not managed our affairs as a country prudently. That is why we have gotten to where we have gotten to. And unfortunately, duty bearers, whenever you suggest any alternative measures to duty bearers, they are reluctant and adamant in adhering to whatever you are suggesting, as they are behaving as if the entire knowledge in this world is residing in their heads, which is not, which in my view is not the case. At least government should consider listening to opposing views, and at the end of the day, we may come out from the situation. This DDEP is not the only option available to government to come out from the current situation the country finds itself. It's just unfortunate this path rather than other alternatives, but as we have already indicated, the government of the day is very to taking on board alternative decisions or alternative views, and unfortunately, is where we find ourselves. They adopt and all the same come out from this situation. But let me also add, this is not an IMF hitherto. IMF will suggest conditions for you to meet before they give you whatever whereby they will ask you, the applicant, to propose what you think you can do to come out from your current situation. So it is the government of Ghana that proposed that it is going to do debt restructuring in order to attain a debt sustainability level that is acceptable to the IMF. It is not the IMF that suggested to government that they should do the debt restructuring. And the government of Ghana went with this proposal that is what it seeks to do to achieve the debt sustainability that the IMF think it is okay for it to give any assistance to the government. So that is the position. It is not the case that IMF is imposing this conditionality on the government. The government has decided to go with this route other than other options.
Oh, so it means that the government could have equally used other options. That is, there are homegrown policies that they are also putting in place to be able to have a debt sustainability program running so that they can now meet.
Sure. Okay. Because if you look at the 2023 budget that the government proposed, in the expenditure column, you realize that the government has indicated some amount that is going to service its debt. That is both amortization and payment of principal, payment of interest. And this revenue, as it stands now, still accrues to government.
Okay.
You understand? So basically, if you look at the 2023 budget, two items on the budget were taking almost every revenue that accrues to government, which has to do with interest payments, amortization, and compensation payments. These three items on the budget were consuming all the government revenue that it is accruing. So if you want to still achieve their sustainability, it is incumbent on you to look at other options within the budget. Whereas lies the fact that government can consider cutting down some of its expenditures, which will, at the end of the day, rake in some revenue for the government to pay its debtors. You understand? Okay. So it is not the case that the DDEP is only the option available to government to achieve debt sustainability.
But do you think there are areas that government could actually cut down in their expenditure?
Sure. For instance, the government can look at government machinery expenditure. Okay. The government can also look at merging some of the ministries, some of the departments, and some of the agencies. And some of the agencies, in my view, are not necessary in our current situation. And some of the portfolios that the government is running, in my view, are also not important at our current precarious situation. For instance, why will the government still want to maintain the free SHS secretariat when we have Ministry of Education with departments that are equally capable of running that secretariat? You know, that secretariat alone ought to get budget funding for it to run. You understand? Yeah. So if you cut that secretariat off, the work that the secretariat is doing can equally be done by the Ministry of Education.
Okay.
So in this case, the expenditure or the cost you are incurring in running the secretariat, you are not going to incur that cost. That cost will be savings to the government, and Ministry of Education will run that secretariat, just like Northern Development Authority, the Southern Development Authority. These are all agencies that we already have institutions and departments which are capable of running these agencies or departments or authorities.
But there is one thing that is striking so much. If you look at the Ministry for Special Development that was pulled down, and then now an agency established under the office of the president. Unfortunately, the budget for the then ministry was even less than the budget for this agency or this office under the presidency.
Yes, so, you see, the problem has to do with honesty on the part of our leaders, because these people can come out by virtue of the fact that there is a camera on them, people are listening to them. They can give you the nice talks and later on go back and do the worst thing. So in the public domain, the Ministry of Special Initiative is not existing.
Yeah.
Okay. But they have now incorporated that in the office of the president or whatever office of the presidency, whatever it is, and they are expending monies. Okay. So you and I will think, okay, the ministry is no more in existence, so we are saving. But in actual fact, that ministry or the secretariat that has been created at the office of the presidency, they are still spending money. You understand? So if you do that, at the end of the day, you cannot save for the useful things that ought to be catered for. And here we find ourselves with this DDEP. Our leaders ought to be honest. They have to be candid with the people, because if government says that we should do burden sharing, the government ought to demonstrate with practical examples or practical things that suggest that truly the government is also playing some part or taking some burden of this whole problem. But if the government is not demonstrating by deeds that it is also taking part of this, how do you call this situation or this burden, then unfortunately the citizens alone cannot carry the burden. That is why you found out that during this announcement of this DDEP, people were, bondholders were all over the place agitating, exempters, we are not ready to be part of it, because they have seen that the government is not taking steps that suggest that they are also ready to bear some of the consequences.
Then it means that what the former Chief Justice Sophia Akufo said, you seems to fall in line with her suggestion, because she has also indicated that if government wants them to support in taking down the burden on the country, government itself should demonstrate it. But unfortunately, she is not seeing that.
Yes, that is a truism, and there is no way I can depart from the fact that what the government is saying is not what actually the government is doing. The government says A and that's B, which is very, very unfortunate. So in that sense, if you ask me to also contribute my quota in ensuring that the economy bounce back, I will certainly expect of you, what are you also doing to make sure that the economy bounces back? So what the Chief Justice said is the fact. The government is not showing enough commitment. The government, by its actions, are not suggesting that they are ready to take part of the burden that they are talking about, that we should share.
Okay. Now, before I get to the issue of the Bank of Ghana, what possibly could you and your party have done differently to prevent Ghana from getting to this economic crisis, to get us where we are now, that the finance minister says by the end of March we could crash, or the entire economy could crash, which that is on paper but not reality, because they have amassed a lot of wealth to be able to determine the economic pace of the country. What could the NDC have done differently at this point?
You know, one thing I can say for a fact is that in managing an economy or in managing a country, the most important thing the managers ought to bear in mind is prudence.
Okay.
Yes, because with this IMF program, IMF is seeking to give us only 3 billion.
Yeah.
And this 3 billion will come in tranches. So you know that for a period of 3 years. So arguably, every year you are going to get 1 billion. And the problems we find ourselves in is more than, or they are more than that 3 billion.
Okay.
You understand? The IMF, after giving you this 3 billion bailout, will not sit down for you to mismanage the 3 billion. It is just a matter of the IMF going to ensure that you manage the 3 billion in addition to other resources at your disposal prudently. So one thing we should bear in mind has to do with prudence when it comes to managing the public finances. The NDC wouldn't have had ministries of agric and also have ministry of what? Fisheries. One ministry could or is enough to handle these sectors. And I remember during JM's tenure, JM handled the aviation sector, the transport sector, the railway sector with just one ministry. That is one substantive minister and one deputy, not even 2 deputies. So if the NDC is supposed to be in power, the only thing they can ensure, or they will do to ensure that we come out from this quagmire, is just a matter of prudent managing of the resources that are available to the government. Because of the state, it had only one oil field. It had only one oil field, but and other social intervention programs that the government did at the time. Just oppose that with Akufo-Addo, who is having, aside the borrowings and aside the numerous taxes that we have collected and they are still collecting. So it's just a matter of this government has not been prudent when it comes to managing the economy. They have always focused their expenditure doesn't come back. But when you invest in capital expenditure projects, you will definitely realize that this project will yield dividend at the end of the day, and you are going to benefit from this dividend to settle your debt. So, for instance, take a road network. You might not decide to put toll booths on these roads, okay? But if the roads are motorable, people are able to move to their workplaces on time. And when they get to their workplaces on time, they are able to work for productivity to go up.
Yeah.
When productivity goes up, what is the end result of productivity going up? You are able to collect taxes, and you are able to get more. It creates employment, and you are, by virtue of that, you are going to get more taxes from those who are going to be employed, even though you have not put a toll booth on the road. But the effect of having that road in place will bring the revenue indirectly. You understand? Because if somebody is staying at Kaswa and going to work at Accra, or in Accra, and the person spends 2 hours or 3 hours from Kaswa to Accra, by the time the person gets to the office, he is already tired.
Sure.
What productive thing do you think such a person can put up? So everything has to do with managing the economy with the resources that are available to you prudently, so that the economy will itself generate the money that you are looking for. You don't just go and say you are doing free SHS on a wholesale basis. You understand? You are doing free SHS on a wholesale basis, when in fact there are some people who can pay. So if people who can pay exist, why don't you allow them to assist by way of paying the boarding fee? Say, okay, everything is free except feeding at the boarding level. So that resources that you are spending for the feeding of the boarders, can't you save it and use it for another thing? It's just unfortunate that we find ourselves in this situation, and the government is so intransigent that whatever you suggest, they turn a deaf ear to it. Mr. Mpianim, our noble economist Kwame Mpianim, could not contain the situation to the extent that he had to come publicly to intimate that it has reached Ken Ofori-Atta, the finance minister, on several occasions to suggest alternatives. But unfortunately, the finance minister is not amenable to such proposal. So that is how come we find ourselves in this situation, and we are all grappling with this economic crisis.
even though the finance minister has the total responsibility for the economy of the country by virtue of his position, if you listen to him when he addressed the pensioners who were picketing at the office, he said whatever they were bringing forth, he was going to take it and go and meet with the president and the vice president.
Yes.
Does that mean that it is the three of them that takes the final decision, even though he's a minister of finance? Or
Yes, Ken Ofori-Atta is the Minister for Finance. He is only his work is largely an implementation of policies. There are most of the policies and programs that the government is running are not his personal policies and programs. These are programs and policies agreed at cabinet level, economic management team level. So when they agree on a policy or a program at that level, he only comes as a finance minister to implement them. So cabinet as it stands, the economic management team as it stands are all to be blamed for our current economic woes. We cannot single out only Ken Ofori-Atta as the sole causative agent of our current precarious situation. The vice president, who is the head of the economic management team, is culpable. Members of cabinet are also culpable of whatever is going on, because if the president is not aware and is not happy with whatever is going on at the finance ministry, he bears the ultimate responsibility to sack the finance minister. And because the president has not sacked the finance minister, it suggests that whatever is going on at the finance ministry, which translates into the economy, the president is aware and is happy of. If he's not happy, he would have sacked the finance minister by now. And there have been calls upon calls on him, to the extent that members of his own political party in parliament had to come public by saying the president should sack the finance minister, and failure to do so, they are not going to sit to have any engagement with the finance minister. If you recall that episode of the 98 MPP MPs who registered their displeasure about the continuous stay in office of the current finance minister, and their engagement with the party, that is the MPP, and the presidency suggested that they should allow the finance minister to present the 2023 budget and also see to the negotiation of the IMF engagement, after which the finance minister will be asked to leave or not to leave. So what we are all clear with in our mind as at now is that the finance minister output is appreciable to the president, and for that matter, the president is also culpable in whatever economic mess we find ourselves in.
Okay, but then they are very blessed to have had the best economic wizard, well, I wouldn't say in the world, let me say probably in Africa, because they brag so much about him running the economy of Zimbabwe, the economy of Zambia, and what have you, visiting lecturer all over, and he has very good understanding of the economic fundamentals of a country. He happens now to lead the economic management team. But let's refresh our memory with this particular video in which the vice president made certain comments. Then we'll come back after that breather, and then we'll take the questions from that point. I hope Mr. Producer is ready to give us that video.
You hear the NDC saying, but the debt level has gone up. Sure, the debt level has gone up, but economic management has not gone down. The debt level has increased, yes, But why do we want to maintain prudent debt levels? When you teach economics, you have to ask your students that question. Why is it that we ask that the debt levels be maintained at prudent levels? The reason is because if you do not manage your debt properly, it will affect your exchange rate, it will affect your interest rates, it will affect your inflation, it will affect your growth. Isn't that the case? You are managing the economy in a way to look at its impact on these variables: exchange rates, interest rates, inflation, and growth rates. That is the issue. When the NDC was in government, well, way before they took us to HIPIC, remember the HIPIC period, they had mismanaged the debt levels such that we had very high inflation, very high exchange rate depreciation, very high interest rates, and low growth. That was the legacy they left us. By the time we were going towards 2016, the debt levels had increased to an extent where the inflation was going up, interest rates going up, exchange rate depreciation going up, and growth also coming down. And they had to run to the IMF for a bailout. Wasn't that the case? That was NDC economic management. Our debt levels have gone up, but what has happened to inflation? It has come down. What has happened to exchange rates? Depreciation has come down. What has happened to interest rates? It has come down. What has happened to growth? It is going up. That is a difference in economic management.
Okay. So I hope my producer will bring us back. Mr.
Yes,
Mensah, you heard the vice president.
Watching this video reminds me of the days when we were in training college. We were taught that when you are teaching and there are 2 C's in teaching. If you can't convince them, just confuse them. Yes, you know, he was speaking to audience, and for that matter, he ought to confuse them with his own theories. You know, there are wisdom, or there is wisdom, and there is knowledge.
Sure.
You might have the knowledge, but you might not have the wisdom to carry out whatever knowledge you have. It is trite knowledge that when your debt gets to unsustainable levels, okay, it is not acceptable because you have to service that debt. It will definitely affect your interest rate, it will affect your inflation, it will affect your exchange rate, and it will affect your GDP. Simply put, you take 1,000 cedis as your monthly salary, then you go and borrow 900. Hello, how much? Your salary is 1,000 cedis a month, and you have borrowed 900. The loan that you have taken, interest hasn't come yet. So you borrow 1,000. Your income is left with what, 100 cedis. You are left with what, 100 cedis. This 100 cedis, you are supposed to give part to your wife as maintenance or housekeeping money. You are also supposed to give part to your children as their pocket money whenever they are going to school. You are also expected to keep part of this 100 cedis as your pocket money when you are going to work, whatever you eat at work. So as a man, do you think you can survive on this 100 cedis till the month ends? It is impossible. And if your revenue, the 100 cedis is not sufficient to cater for you throughout the month, it will affect your purchasing power. It will even affect the quality of education that you give to your children. It will affect the kind of meal that your children will eat at home, and in totality, it will affect the growth of your children. So, if by the macro level, if your debt is unsustainable, it will affect your interest rates, it will affect your inflation, it will affect your exchange rate, and it will affect your GDP. That is why we find ourselves in this kind of economic mess. Had we maintained prudent and sustainable and realistic debt level, we wouldn't be experiencing high interest rates, high inflation of 50-something%, exchange rate of about $1 to almost 15 Ghana cedis, and growth is not picking up. It's because your debt is such that you are unable to do the very investment that will propel growth. And when growth is stagnant, it will affect all these indicators. So it is always advisable as a manager to always maintain prudent debt level and debt level that are sustainable. So if your debt is not sustainable, just forget it. You cannot, and I say on authority, you will not achieve whatever he was seeking to tell the people. You are just seeking to confuse those at the hall.
Yeah, well, I'm sure if I were even there, I would equally get confused because if you listen to how he started, when the debt level is going high and blah, 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 that means that your economic management policies are not good or they're not in place.
Yeah, so if the debt is going up and exchange rate GDP as he indicated is also going up, why are we in this mess? Because if GDP we are the basic economics that we learned, GDP is gross domestic product, so meaning services and goods within the year is going up. So if services and goods are going up, it means you and I will get job to do. Is that not the case?
Yeah.
If you and I get job to do, are we not going to pay taxes?
You will pay taxes.
And where does the taxes go? The taxes go to the government. The government will get more revenue to service its debt. The government will get more revenue to fix the roads, get money to put up other infrastructures, that will bring more development to the nation. Is that not the case? So if you are telling me, or the vice president is saying that debt is going up and GDP is going up, why is it that we are facing this economic mess? Why do we find ourselves in this situation? The correlation must exist. If you are claiming that debt is going up and that growth is also going up, that correlation must exist.
Yeah.
It should translate in our lives.
Let me not take you far. When you were speaking about the intervention by the IMF, you said the IMF will not give us money or their support and sit there and allow us to mismanage the funds. Now we have seen that the IMF has appointed an advisor to the Bank of Ghana. Is it a prudent decision on the part of the government, or we have no say in what the IMF can do with us?
When you apply for a bailout from the IMF, let me put on record, it's not a charitable institution. It's not what we used to say a Father Christmas. This 3 billion that we are seeking from the IMF, It's not money that is sitting in IMF's office, which has nothing to do. This 3 billion also belong to people. So when they give you that money, they will not sit down for you to go and mismanage it. Okay, they will not sit down for you to go and mismanage it. That is why when you sign up to a program with the IMF, they will be at your back and ensure that you do the right thing. The Bank of Ghana, by its latest development, has demonstrated that it is unable to manage its own affairs. So if you are unable to manage your own affairs, certainly the person that you are seeking help from will come in and manage your affairs for you. That is why they have appointed an advisor. I think he's from Kenya, to come and advise you, because you know the Bank of Ghana is a regulatory body.
Yeah.
The Bank of Ghana is supposed to regulate the banks and other financial institutions in the country. So if you cannot manage your own affairs, how then do you go and manage the commercial banks and other financial institutions? Per the laws, Bank of Ghana is not supposed to give government credit more than 5% of the previous year's government revenue, total revenue. And per the data Bank of Ghana has released shows that they have given the government in excess of 40 billion. So if you do the calculation yourself, you will find out that 40 billion, 40 billion, yes.
Ghana cedis or?
Ghana cedis, Ghana cedis. Okay. They have given the government in excess of 40 billion. That is why the IMF will not sit down for these things to happen, and that they have appointed an advisor. So the advisor...
Wait, 40 billion?
Yes,
and
40
we
billion.
are going to IMF for $3 billion.
Yes, so if you use 10 cedis, the Bank of Ghana rate of 10 cedis to do the calculation, you realize that the money that the Bank of Ghana has thrown to government is almost the same as whatever we are going for from the IMF.
Then we are in for trouble.
Yes, and more so, this particular act of the Bank of Ghana violates its own provisions of the act establishing the Bank of Ghana. They are supposed to just give 5% of the previous total revenue of the of the states. So last year, 2021, I think 2021 or so, the total revenue of government was about 70 billion. So if you calculate 5% of 70 billion, it's around 3 point something.
Yeah.
So there is no justification for Bank of Ghana giving the government more than this 3.5 billion, because the Bank of Ghana rules cannot be suspended, unlike the fiscal rules, which can be suspended. And you and I will attest to the fact that the fiscal rules were suspended during the COVID era, but the Bank of Ghana rules were not suspended, because the monetary rules are different from the fiscal rules. Yes. So I am not surprised. IMF has appointed an advisor to the Bank of Ghana, because the Bank of Ghana, as it stands now, is violating its own laws, and it is acting without recourse to proper banking rules, and the Bank of Ghana is also engaging in illegal activities with the government. I don't know the kind of relationship the finance minister has with the governor at the Bank of Ghana, to the extent that the Bank of Ghana governor will allow the finance ministry to withdraw, or government assess that amount of money from the Bank of Ghana.
I'll come back to you. I want that to look at if Parliament has an oversight responsibility over the Bank of Ghana and some of these transactions, and then we'll see what Parliament could do. I just want to read the views expressed by our followers, and then we'll come back to you, and then we'll take it out from there. So, I think our very first message is coming from Ahunfe Patricia. Fair Patricia, good evening, comrades, watching live from Hanover. Good evening to you, Pat, and the entire members in Hanover. We are grateful for you joining us once again. Ose Superior, good evening, watching from Barcelona, Spain. Ose, we are grateful once again, and we are proud that always you are part of us. Ruth, follow ED. Oh, ED. He says, hi there, Doc. Please, I need a number to reach you for important info. Please, please, please. A big scam is going on in one of the institutions in Ghana. I'm pretty sure the producer will get in touch with you, and then we will connect, and whatever it is, we will do our possible best to get to the bottom of it. Do not hesitate. Contact the producer and then drop the information. Yeah. Oh, Ghana, Mr. Albert Alandachia is right here. He says, so according to the logic of this government, we need an overbloated government to solve the problems created by an overbloated government. How does that make sense? God is watching us. Oh, you are already in Nigeria. Now, Mr. Dachia once again says, Mr. Mensah, how can the NDC solve the problem of Ghana with capital investment when there is not physical space to embark on those programs in the first place? Well, I'm sure Mr. Mensah will have to give a brief on this, probably something that will help all of us. Oh, Patience Daku once again. Today switched off to YouTube. Good evening and watching you live from Hamburg, Germany. Patience, we are grateful that you are part of the show. So we'll continue to look at the questions that raised by Mr. Dachia, and I will bring back Mr. Mensah to look at it, and then we see. Mr. Mensah, there's a viewer expression where it's asking how NDC can solve the problem of Ghana with capital investment when there is no physical space for it.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Jerome, and let me greet your viewers once again, particularly Albert, who asked the question. And I'm very grateful for this question because it has to do with what I initially indicated, that managing economy has to do with prudence. If you recall, when Mahama was the head of state some time back, the then finance minister, Mr. Tekpe, had this famous quote that he was engaged in smart borrowing. You might not have, there are so many financial models that one can adopt in raising revenue or in raising funds for a project. And one of such model that I saw the then finance minister engage in was this smart borrowing. This smart borrowing simply means, let me borrow, invest that borrowing in a particular project that I think can pay for itself. And a typical example is the Atwabo gas processing plant. This processing plant, after completion, is able to work or produce the gas that we need for our thermal plants and also for our domestic consumption, to the extent that every year we are able to save about $300 million, which hitherto would have been the case that we will use this amount of money to go and import gas from Nigeria. So in borrowing that amount of money and investing in this particular project, we are able to save this amount. And we should also bear in mind that by getting $300 million at the end of every year, it puts, or it brings the burden on our currency down. So you realize that depreciation will also not be occurring at rampant on a speedily basis. Okay, so the NDC, as it is and as I know, have other financial models, although there is no fiscal space that they can use to engage the capital expenditure that the texter was referring to. But there are other financial models that they can use to raise the revenue for the capital expenditure project. And I give you another one, which has to do with the T3, that is Terminal 3, the airport that you and I have been using whenever we visit Ghana. So there are other fiscal financial models that we can adopt to raise revenue.
Okay. Let me push you a little now, because we have read a lot of commentary
So,
on the.
excuse me, let me also add in with this. With Ameri, the government of Ghana at the time even engaged in what we call the boss array that they don't operate, own, and transfer. So there are other financial models that the government can engage in to raise funds to. It's just a matter of having a prudent and a competent person at the helm of affairs.
Okay. Monica Teo sends her greetings. Good evening, comrades. Enjoying the discussion. We are grateful, Monica, that you have joined us. And let me now take a little swap at this. There were a lot of commentaries going around when the former Chief Justice took part in the demonstration of pensioners on the impact of the domestic debt exchange program on bondholders of pensioners. There were a lot of commendations for her, and there were a lot of condemnations for her. A lot of people condemned her because they think that she's part and parcel of the government, but she believes that right now, well, she worked in the government, and there she was under oath and all that, secrecy and the rest. She was gagged, she couldn't speak. But right now, she is not on government payroll. She has to fight for herself and for her colleagues. Where you sit, what is your stake? What do you think about it?
Thank you very much, Jerome. There is a saying that each man for himself, God for us all. If initially or hitherto she was in government, and for that matter, she could not speak, now she is no longer in government. And this issue that we are talking about has to do with her personal funds. So if you think you were in government before, or you have been part of the government, and for that matter, you are not going to fight for your personal funds, then a time will come, your own personal funds will vanish into thin air. So she was fighting for her own funds, that is her own money. So I see it as a wake-up call for other members who have been with the government in one way or the other to also rise up. Because if you are sick in the house, the government will not use taxpayers' money to come and take care of you. You have to use your own money to take care of yourself. So if you don't speak up now, and you think you are part, or you were part of the government, and for that matter, you are going to keep quiet, a time will come, you realize that you cause your own distraction. So the Chief Justice, that the former Chief Justice, having joined the demonstrators to picket at the Finance Ministry is in the right direction. And we have all witnessed the kind of media publicity that came to bear when she joined the demonstrators to picket at the Finance Ministry. So right now, her participation has how do you put it, has motivated others to also get on board.
Yeah.
So I think that she did the right thing, and I salute her for doing so.
Well, I think from where I sit, I also believe so, because if people get to understand, she is an Article 71 employer, and therefore she goes home on that same Article 71 salary, and on daily basis she should be able to live with that. But then, if you sit down and say, because I am well placed, tomorrow, when they take the weaker ones, tomorrow it will be your turn, and then you will also get impacted. But she said something which which touched me so much, because there's a saying that When the fish comes out of the water to tell the crocodile is one eye, you have no choice but to believe it.
Yes.
She said certain things. That yes, indeed, the government has borrowed so much, but they have nothing to show for it. I think that is the sentiment of almost all Ghanaians, except those of us who are typical politicians.
You see, Mr. Jerome, the fact always remains the fact. And there is only one truth. You cannot have truth A and truth B. There is only one truth. If you and I visit Ghana right now, won't you see T3?
Sure, you'll see it.
If you go to Atwabo, won't you see the Atwabo gas plant?
Live.
If you go to my hometown, you will see E-Block.
You see it live.
You understand? So, if at the end of the day, you tell me you have built, let's say, T3, that is Terminal 3, and I go to Accra and I don't see any Terminal 3, then what do you want me to say? It is a fact. The government has borrowed so much, the government has had so much in terms of revenue, but unfortunately, we are unable to quantify the kind of investment that the government has made vis-a-vis the revenue that it has accrued to the government. It is a fact, and it is very, very unfortunate that as a country we find ourselves in this situation, because the kind of revenue, the kind of money that has accrued to this government, we should be seeing times 3 of what JM did.
Okay.
JM took about less than $4 billion from the Eurobond market, and Akufo-Addo alone has taken more than 15 billion from the Eurobond market. So, by virtue of simple calculation, you realize that they have taken more than twice what JM had. But what is it there? What is there that you can pinpoint and say, wow, these are the massive infrastructure the 15 billion has brought to us? You talk of 1D, 1F. Where are the factories? If you are putting up factories, it should translate into the economy that 1D, 1F should create job. 1D, 1F should produce items that ordinarily we will go and import. So by virtue of this production and we not going to import, you should see it reflecting in the exchange rates.
Exchange rate.
Because the pressure that our importation brings on the CD will be lessened, and for that matter, the rate or the exchange rate will be something appreciable. But exchange rate, the depreciation is still ongoing. We are still importing. Unemployment rate still going up. So what impact is? You understand? One village, one dam. The dams are supposed to run for the whole calendar year, not for a specific period of time. Okay? So if the dam is running throughout the whole calendar year, then it means we are going to have water to power our agriculture sector. That is the planting of food and whatever policy that they are running. We should have abundance food supply. And when there is abundance of food, you realize that the price of food will come down. Simple demand
and supply. Yeah. I think we're running.
Unfortunately, that is not what we are seeing. So you see that truly the monies that have accrued to the government have all gone into consumption. And you know, consumption, when you spend the money, it doesn't come back.
Sure.
You will not get it. You will not get it back. It is gone and gone for good.
Oh, Mr. Mason, I just ran, we just ran out of time. But there is what will I say, an ongoing discussion that we will want to engage you at another time that we can look at it. The war between the Auditor General and the Attorney General. The Auditor General has done his work. He has made publication of audit work, especially that of COVID-19, which is a conditionality of the IMF because there were conflicting figures. The Attorney General thinks that he ought not to have published the report until the PAC has sat on it and then giving the people fair hearing. But we all know that for audit to be carried out, whoever is responsible is given the opportunity to react to some of the allegations and all that. But time is far gone already. We will have to find another period and that we can look at it. Is it the right procedure? Has the Auditor General done something wrong? If he has done something wrong, how come that over the years it's been running through, even under Odame as a Deputy Attorney General and to successive Attorney General, he's been publishing every time before the Public Accounts Committee even says on it. There was nothing wrong. It is only this time that he has brought out the report on COVID, and that the Attorney General has now seen the need to go into it. But whatever the case, we might find another time where we can have a good discussion on it. But for now, I think I'll give you the opportunity to say hello to your NDC fraternity and whatever message you have for all our viewers for this evening's program.
Thank you very much for the opportunity. One thing I can say to my NDC members back home is that next later part of this month, we'll be picking our nomination form for contesting parliamentary and presidential slots for the 2024 elections, and I urge each and everyone who has shown or demonstrated an intense interest in contesting to conduct him or herself in such a manner that at the end of the day, peace and tranquility will prevail in the party. You know, this is a contest, and our opponents are at the back, make a praying that we engage in rancor activities and our front gets divided for them to have their way in the 2024 election. But I'm appealing to my comrades back home that we should all engage in a civil campaign, and our campaign should be issue-based rather than personality attacks, and whoever emerges as a winner, bringing on board persons who could not make it wouldn't be that difficult. So these are the very few words that I will admonish my comrades back home to have it at the back of their minds. And once again, I also extend my heartfelt gratitude and regards to my CFR members who have always egged me on and always supported me in one way or the other, especially Chairman Abufa. I hope you remember Chairman Abufa.
Abufa, Ireland.
Yes, I unfortunately later part of last year he lost a son, and my condolences to him and the family. We pray that God strengthen him as the days go by.
Great. It's been wonderful having you, Mr. Charles Mensah, and I'm sure a lot of our viewers are well educated right now, or they are well informed on this domestic debt exchange, which is being carried around by the government of the day. And we have reached this point as a result of the reckless management of our economy by this MPP government. But unfortunately, that is a price for democracy. We've got to suffer it until the next election in 2024. So whatever the case, we keep praying that the good Lord will keep us alive and bring us to 2024, and the entire people of Ghana would decide what is good for them and what is good for us all. So wherever you are, it has been a pleasure coming your way with MyView show on Today's Ghana News TV. And again, we will be back on next week, Monday, at the same time on MyView show. But we could possibly join you on Friday with a special edition. So wherever you are, keep following us on YouTube, keep following us on Facebook, keep following us on all our social media handles, and whatever comes our way, we will come across with you. Good evening and have a blessed night.
Ya kana se wantia ejao ehanya beto mampam oso ntie so dogo binwa bem mampam oso ntie nani amuka nyina guna swati move swara mampam oso ntie move swara Mampam, also until once upon a time, animal